South Africa is shocked by champion sprinter Oscar Pistorius' 6-year murder sentence. Developers in Uganda race to invent the next big app. And will Brexit see Berlin win the European tech race? Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening, I'm Esther Githu. This is Africa 54. Vincent Makori is off today. South African Paralympian Oscar Pistorius was sentenced to 6 years in jail Wednesday for murdering his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp 3 years ago. Judge Thokozile Masipa cited mitigating circumstances such as his remorse, the time he spent in jail for his original sentence, and that he was not wearing his prosthetic legs at the time of the crime in reducing the prescribed minimum sentence of 15 years.
Although a custodial sentence is the proper sentence, I am of the view that a long term of imprisonment will not serve justice in this matter. The accused has already served a sentence of 12 months imprisonment. He is a first offender, and considering the facts of this matter, he is not likely to re-offend.
During the trial, Pistorius claimed that he mistook Steenkamp for an intruder when he shot 4 times through a locked bathroom door, killing her on the night of Valentine's Day 2013. Prosecutors argued that he meant to kill Steenkamp. The law graduate and aspiring model was 29 years old at the time of her death. In 2014, Judge Masipa convicted Pistorius of culpable homicide equivalent to the U.S. charge of manslaughter and gave him a 5-year sentence. He was released on parole in October after a year of time served, only to see his conviction overturned by an appeals court and replaced with a murder conviction in December. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu arrived in Kigali, Rwanda, the third stop of his 4-nation Africa tour Wednesday, and was received by his host, Rwanda's President Paul Kagame. Netanyahu immediately headed to Kigali Genocide Memorial to pay respects to the 1994 genocide victims. He noted similarities between the Rwanda genocide, in which 800,000 people, mainly Tutsis, were killed, to the Holocaust. The Israeli leader started his East African tour in Uganda Monday and was in Kenya Tuesday. He will visit Ethiopia on the last leg of his tour of Africa, which he says is meant to rebuild relations with the continent. U.S. President Barack Obama has announced plans to maintain about 8,400 U.S. troops in Afghanistan into next year. The administration had initially planned to reduce the number of U.S. troops from the current 9,800 to around 5,500 by the end of 2016. Speaking at the White House Wednesday, Obama said the security situation in Afghanistan remains precarious, and so he is leaving more troops than originally planned through the end of his administration.
In Afghanistan, we're joined by 41 allies and partners, a coalition that contributes more than 6,000 troops of their own. We have a partner in the Afghan government and the Afghan people who support a long-term strategic partnership with the United States. And in fact, Afghans continue to step up. For the second year now, Afghan forces are fully responsible for their own security. Every day, nearly 320,000 Afghan soldiers and police are serving and fighting, and many are giving their lives to defend their country.
Obama says leaving more troops in Afghanistan when he leaves office will also give the next U.S. president more flexibility to make decisions about how best to move forward on long-running conflict. Muslims around the world are celebrating Eid al-Fitr festival that marks the end of the holy month of Ramadan. The starting day of Eid festivities varies every year from country to country. Eid celebrations begin with a special prayer in mosques and open-air areas. Muslim families and communities gather to celebrate with prayers, feasts and festivals. In Egypt, worshippers gathered at Cairo's Mustafa Mahmoud Mosque and remembered the victims of Monday's bomb blast in Saudi Arabia. A series of attacks, including one in Baghdad that killed 250 people, shocked the region as the holy month approached its end. Now, turning to business, things are certainly changing in the UK and European Union following surprise Brexit vote on June 23rd. With an update on how global markets are adjusting post-referendum is Jill Malandrino, our business correspondent in New York. Hello, Jill.
Hey, Esther. So global markets have made stunning moves since the Brexit vote. We're off to a rough start this week as risk-on assets like stocks and crude oil are being sold off, with investors rotating into defense, safe haven-related assets such as gold, which hit a fresh 28-month high this morning. Although the S&P 500 reversed 23 points to the upside following the European close at 11 Eastern. So you can see how crazy these moves are. The pound was hit the hardest, plunging below $1.28 as Brexit fears push investors into the yen. The pound is now down over 14% since the referendum vote. The pound continues to fall amid expectations that the Bank of England will cut interest rates and roll out its quantitative purchase program.
So, Jill, did the Britons go to the polls understanding fully the consequences of Brexit?
That's an excellent question. And a tweet from Google Trends suggests many voters thought about their decision after the vote. According to Google data, what does it mean to leave the EU was the top UK question on the EU since the results were officially announced. So no wonder there is a campaign to have a second chance on the EU vote. The UK economy is already starting to shudder as the cost of Brexit hits home. Investors are rushing to redeem their money in real estate funds. In fact, 3 funds put a freeze on withdrawals. And analysts are concerned there could be a sharp reduction in investment spending, a hit to the commercial property market, and most likely a slowdown in consumer spending in the UK.
So, Jill, are you beginning to see the Brexit impact on the African markets and trade?
No, not yet. South Africa has the closest ties to the UK, and its central bank deputy governor said today that the impact of Brexit on South Africa's direct trade link with the UK are expected to be minimal, but the country will be indirectly impacted by heightened market volatility, like we're seeing with global markets. But NKC African Economics made an excellent point in a recent published report. While Brexit has added to volatile global risk sentiment, we continue to view systemic risk from China as the singular most salient source of external risk to Africa's economy. And that makes perfect sense as China continues to ramp up investment extensively in Africa.
Jill, we'll look at how the markets do in Africa in the coming weeks. Thank you so much. Jill Malandrino is VOA Africa 54 business correspondent reporting live from New York. And just as fortune hunters migrated to find gold in the old Wild West, today there's a gold rush happening in Africa. Developers are scrambling to release more and more apps. Paul Ndiho has our report.
Mobile applications are beginning to transform African communities economically, socially, and politically. Young African software developers are creating apps to address their needs in many areas. In the East African nation of Uganda, LeBron Brian Sekalega, a recent graduate of information technology at Makori University in Kampala, has developed an app dubbed e-Chicken that helps farmers.
It's an app that helps backyard farmers who rear few birds, 10 to 50. It works as a guideline for them. It helps them during the entire process of rearing birds, like from the word go up to when they are selling them.
As an experienced app developer, LeBron Sekalega knew a good opportunity when he saw one. And he's part of a talented group of Ugandans trying to find homegrown solutions for problems Ugandan farmers are facing.
When you open the app, there's a menu. You have where you can search for diseases, you have vaccination, you have drug stores, you have feed stores, you have some simple tips, you have doctors, we have marketplaces, and the growth plan.
Sekalega has won several contests for developing cutting-edge applications, including the National Youth Talent Expo. He has also developed an app that makes all the student class schedules available on handheld devices. Donald Waruhanga, a graduate of computer science at Makori University, like Brian, he's also won several awards. He's built from scratch mobile applications that focus on wellness.
My app is called Mama Baby.
Mama Baby?
Yeah.
Why Mama Baby?
Yeah, because it deals with pregnant women at the state when they are giving birth. The midwife opens the app, and this is the first page. So if she clicks here, she can enter the biodata of the mother. It includes the date, the last menstruation period, the number of births she has had, the expected date of delivery. The midwife enters these parameters at different intervals. We have an alarm to always remind her to take a particular parameter. The system automatically generates a graph.
Okay.
So if she's able to generate the graph, to interpret the graph, that's well and good. She can look at the graphs and then she can interpret them.
According to the World Health Organization, an estimated 300,000 women will die from complications related to pregnancy or childbirth. Donald says that his application is meant to change this narrative.
We are hoping that if perhaps with collaboration with maybe the Ministry of Health, if it can avail smartphones or tablets to these midwives, then it would save a great deal.
Tech analysts said that these apps will have a significant impact on how we use smartphones in the future, and that young African app developers are innovating out of necessity. Critics say that most of these app developers are struggling to market their creations on a national and international level. However, for LeBron Sekalaga and Donald Walhanga, they are optimistic about the future and hope that one day they will cash in as well. Paul Ndiho, VOA News.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, Japan's commitment to economic development in Africa. Stay with us.
I am Sheikh Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today, we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
We're just weeks away from the next Tokyo International Conference on African Development. And for the first time ever, the first summit will take place in Africa, Nairobi, Kenya to be exact. In this week's Peter Clotte one-on-one, Peter speaks with Japanese diplomat Tamasaki Sakuda about relations between Washington and Tokyo and Japan's overall commitment to Africa.
Mr. Tamaki, before President Obama visited Hiroshima, and for that matter, before he visited Japan, there were speculations that possibly he would be apologizing for the bomb that killed so many people in Hiroshima and all that. What was the reaction after he went there?
I think the overwhelming reaction of the Japanese people, especially the people of Hiroshima, was that of joy and pleasure. I can tell you one opinion poll which was conducted immediately after President Obama's visit to Hiroshima. 98% of the people said that they positively assessed, they evaluated the visit positively.
98%?
98%. And I think it speaks for itself.
Now, looking ahead, in the next 5, 10, 15, probably 50 years to come, what are the prospects of warm relations between the U.S. and Japan?
I think Japan and U.S. will continue to enjoy this very strong alliance.
Let me take you to Africa a little bit, because some people said A few years ago, Japan was very prominent in Africa, but it seemed Japan seemed to have been in a slumber, for want of a better word. How would you classify the relationship between Japan and Africa at the moment, and what is, if you can tell, what are some of the initiatives that Japan is coordinating or interacting with the people in Africa?
Japan has been one of the earlier countries who have made Africa an important agenda of G7 meetings, and since then Japan has been leading the discussion on African development. This year in August, Japan will host, together with the African countries, the next TCAD conference in Kenya, and we will bring to bear our resources to Africa in order to ensure that the world will commit itself to the development and the well-being of the African people.
Yeah, how committed is Japan in ensuring these lofty ideas that you've put across now? I mean, how committed is Japan?
Well, if you look at the actual flow of resources from Japan to Africa, I think it has been growing. The trend has been upward. And we have been engaged in African projects massively. So I think the figures, the statistics speak for itself.
So let me take you back to the issue of terrorism and the cooperation between the U.S. and Japan in terms of fighting global terror. What role specifically, if I may ask, is Japan playing in that directive? Because it's a partnership. So what role is Japan playing in that?
Well, Japan, as a member of the G7, G20, and also the United Nations, we have been one of the leading players in supporting the international effort to contain and to exterminate the source of terrorism.
Before we leave you, Minister Tamaki, what will you say, in conclusion, was the biggest achievement following President Obama's trip to Japan?
This visit has showed to the world the consummation of the reconciliation process and showed an inspiration to the rest of the world that adversaries can come to terms with each other and make an example of the strongest alliance in the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tamaki. Thank you very much.
Uganda, a Christian-dominated country, has over 80% of the total population practicing the faith. But with a decline in the number of people attending church services, gospel preachers are taking to the streets. Francis Tumwekwasize Bahene has the story from Uganda's capital city, Kampala.
Walking or driving through Kampala streets, there is no point one can pass without seeing these street gospel preachers. They stand on the strategic locations such as by traffic lights, road junctions, and amidst busy business centers. Amidst such chaos, people rush to attend to their day-to-day activities. Shouting at the top of their voices, the preachers call for repentance and conversion to born-again faith.
For the wages of sin is death. Maybe you go through sin and you don't know.
According to the 2014 census, over 80% of Ugandans are Christians, but the recent trend shows that there is tremendous decline in church service attendees. 34-year-old Semanda Paul, a street preacher, says that the decline in church service attendees has forced them to bring evangelism services on the streets.
On the street you find very many characters, many different people that maybe at times you may never get to church. Now when you look here, in a day you can preach to about maybe 2,000 people. How do you do that? When you serve around 4 taxis can go 10 in number, and each has around 16 people, that is roughly 160 people. Within 5 minutes, you preach to 160 people. When you do that around 15 times, you preach to more than 2,000 people at the same time. As long as all these people have a chance of coming to church. There are those that have never come to church all their lives.
Look at the request of Jesus. The number of street preachers has more than doubled within a period of 3 months. And Paul attributes it to increasing media reports on social immorality, corruption among government officials, and the current political instability in the country. Paul says there needs immediate spiritual intervention.
What we preach has the power to change all that. So we focus on the gospel and the power of the gospel, because it is the power in the gospel that can change the lives of people. So what we preach with the intention of winning souls to the kingdom of God. And when they come to the kingdom, Christ has the power to change their lives. Okay?
In their endeavor to reach out to as many people as possible, the self-styled pastors encounter numerous challenges.
There's so many challenges we face when you're preaching, but at the end of the day, God is being glorified. Like someone may abuse you, someone may speak, there's a time someone threw a stone at me.
Some members of the public take them to be a nuisance, but that has not deterred the street preachers from pursuing their evangelizing activities. Francis Tumwekwasize Bahene for VOA Kampala, Uganda.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, the race to win the title of the Silicon Valley of Europe. We'll be right back.
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They tell you what people are talking about. So for an in-depth look at the stories trending high on social media, turn to #VOA. It's not your typical talk show. From politics to pop culture, #VOA brings in the people leading the conversation, engages the audience, and gets answers to your questions. #VOA. Smart talk for smart people.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. You've heard of Silicon Valley. Well, this is Berlin's Silicon Alley. Thousands of startups are formed in the German capital each year, as many as one every 20 minutes, according to Startup Berlin, following Britain's recent votes to leave the European Union. Politicians and business leaders in Berlin are now sensing they have a chance to replace London as the Silicon Valley of Europe. Berlin is already home to audio-sharing platform SoundCloud and online retailer Zalando. Britain's referendum to leave the 28-nation bloc has already seen a frenzy of bids from cities such as Frankfurt, Paris and Amsterdam to succeed London as Europe's financial capital. And finally, Cairo's newest private transport service is changing the way people travel. Instead of being stuck in the city's notoriously slow traffic, passengers can cruise in the fast lane with a scenic tour from the Nile. Nile taxis run regular services along the famous river between 12 p.m. and 10 p.m. every day. After a trial period with one boat in 2014, the idea has attracted a growing number of passengers keen to avoid the city's notorious traffic jams. The IMF has confirmed that 68% of the traffic jams in the whole world are caused by private cars, and that's what's trending today. Why should an art class for kids in a poor, violence-ridden neighborhood be prioritized when there are so many more immediate needs to address? But the space that is being provided by the Butterfly Art Project is giving kids in Capricorn an opportunity that literally brightens up their lives. Issa Lee Jacobson reports from Cape Town.
Vrygrond, also known as Capricorn, is a community of 42,000 people, about 30 minutes' drive from the centre of Cape Town. 22% of the population here is unemployed, and gang violence is rife. But a collaboration between Capricorn Primary and the Butterfly Art Project has created a haven for the kids of Vrygrond. Angela Katschka, a German art therapist, is the inspiration behind the project.
We are having kids in our program who don't have really adults they can rely on, or well-resourced adults. And at the homes there is a lot happening. There is a lot of violence happening in the families. They witness drug abuse of family members. There is alcoholism and social ills like that.
Last year, violence broke out between rival taxi companies that shut down schools in the area for a week.
The kids were on the road and were witnessing violence and tires burning and people getting shot, walking around with guns in the road. And there was a lot of new, fresh trauma happening for these kids.
The kids are able to process this trauma through art. Akim Yates is 14. After his father died, he struggled to cope and resorted to petty crime. He says he has stopped doing bad stuff since he discovered art.
Our first ever project together was that we did a photography workshop, and he had to go out into the community and photograph the parts of the community that he loved the most. And Akim really stood out in that project. Seeing the community through his eye was a very beautiful thing, because he was able to find beauty in a place where when you first get here, it's difficult to find. From that moment onwards, Akim was so committed to the Butterfly Art Project and what we do that he just changed.
We've got a very dire situation here in Vryheid, and there are very little possibilities for the people to create their own lives. They somehow are stuck, and it's difficult to get out and make a living and be engaged and be who they actually are. And by teaching them from very early age on to be creative beings and show them that they are the creators of their life and they can do something, we cultivate that skill for them, and they understand that it's up to them. They don't have to wait for anybody to save them. They can do it themselves, and they can create their lives and their careers.
People think that it's so difficult and it must be so sad to see the children and what they go through, but there's so much joy in it. There's so much joy in it because they're so resilient, and despite where they come from and what's going on, they're so enthusiastic and so hungry for receiving what we have to give them.
The joy that the Butterfly Art Project brings to the children of Vryheid is apparent to anyone who walks into one of their classes. But it takes the generosity of donors to keep a project like this going. Isley Jacobson for VOA, Cape Town.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune into VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to English in a Minute. Does this idiom mean to do 180 push-ups or jumping jacks?
To do a 180.
So, Jacob just told me that he's not interested in going out with Vanessa.
What? Well, that's a 180 from what he said yesterday.
You mean he wanted to go out with her?
And I already told Vanessa.
Oh, well, that's awkward.
The expression doing a 180 comes from geometry. A circle has 360 degrees. So if you're standing in a circle and turn around 180 degrees, you are facing the opposite direction. In spoken English, this expression means you completely change a decision or opinion to the exact opposite. And that's English in a Minute.